You know, the headscarf. It's got to be one of the most recognizable and, let's be honest, often misunderstood garments in the entire world. But its story, it didn't start with just one religion. So what we're going to do is trace its path through thousands of years of history, through Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, to really unpack how its meaning has been constantly changing.
So, the big question is, why? Why is it worn? Well, the answer isn't some simple, single thread. Think of it more like a giant, intricate tapestry that's been woven across millennia, with each faith adding its own unique color and pattern to the design. And here's something that might actually surprise you. This practice didn't begin with the Abrahamic faiths at all. We have records showing that head covering was a common tradition in ancient cultures like Assyria, Persia, and the Byzantine Empire, long before it ever became part of religious law as we know it.
Okay, so if you go back and look at these old texts, the word you're going to see over and over is veil, which comes from the Latin velum. It's really just a broad term for a covering for the head and shoulders, and yeah, sometimes the face. Just hang on to that idea, because we're going to see how that one word takes on totally different meanings.
All right, first up on our journey, Judaism. This is where we see the practice of head covering make a really dramatic shift, from just being mentioned in stories to becoming a binding religious rule.
Now, this is what's so fascinating. If you look at the Torah, the foundational scripture of Judaism, there's just no direct commandment in there telling women they have to cover their heads. It's not a rule. Instead, the whole idea is woven right into the fabric of its stories.
So you have stories like in Genesis, where Rebekah veils herself the moment she sees her future husband, Isaac. Or later on you see Tamar using a veil as a disguise to carry out her plan. And get this, it's not even just about women. Moses himself, he's described as veiling his own face after he spoke with God. See? These are all powerful moments in a story. They're not lines in a law book.
And right here, this is where the big transformation happens. What started out as, a cultural or personal act you see in the Torah stories, well, it gets interpreted into something way more structured. By the time you get to rabbinic literature, like the Talmud, written centuries later, those stories became the foundation for a real, binding religious law, specifically for married women.
And we're not talking about a minor suggestion here. This rule became incredibly serious. I mean, the Talmud actually states that a man could divorce his wife and not even have to pay the marriage settlement if she went out in public with her head uncovered. So yeah, it had clearly become a huge social and legal deal.
So over time, the headscarf started to take on all these different layers of meaning in Jewish tradition. On one hand, it could signal nobility, high social status. It was also a symbol of modesty and chastity. It helped distinguish Jewish women from the pagan cultures around them. And, maybe most importantly, it was a very clear public sign that a woman was married.
Okay, so now let's move forward. Christianity pops up right in this Jewish context, and it inherits this practice of head covering. But, and this is a big but, it doesn't just copy and paste. It gives it a completely new theological reason for being, a reason that's all about the very order of creation itself. The go-to text for understanding this Christian perspective is right there in Paul's first letter to the Corinthians. He says it flat out, "Every woman who prays or prophesies with her head uncovered dishonors her head." But it's his reasoning. That's what really sets this interpretation apart from everything that came before.
See, Paul lays out this very specific theological hierarchy, kind of like a ladder. Step 1, God is the head of Christ. Okay? Step 2, Christ is the head of man. And step 3, man is the head of woman. So within that whole structure, a woman's head covering becomes a physical symbol, right? It's an outward sign that shows respect for this divine order.
And that, right there, is the fundamental shift in meaning. In the Christian context described by Paul, the headscarf isn't really about your marital status or your social class. Nope. It's a deep theological statement about your place in the grand divine structure of the universe. A totally different rationale.
Okay, let's jump forward a few more centuries. When Islam arrives on the scene, head covering is already a widespread practice in the region. So Islam addresses this custom that's already there, but again, it reframes it with a completely different purpose, an ethic of modesty.
Yeah, it's really important to get this. The Quran didn't invent head covering. Not at all. It basically acknowledged a tradition that already existed and embedded it within a new and distinct ethical framework. It gave it a purpose that was totally different from both the Jewish and the Christian views.
And you can really see the contrast here. The Christian reason? It's all rooted in that theological hierarchy of creation. But the Islamic reason? That's rooted in a universal ethic of modesty, the concept of tessitur. And here's the crucial part. This idea of modesty applies to both men and women in their conduct and their dress. It's a principle of dignity for everyone.
The primary verse you'll see in the Quran on this topic instructs believing women to draw their head coverings over their chests. The focus is really practical, you know? It's about the manner of dress and ensuring modesty, rather than making some big statement about a cosmic hierarchy.
So, the whole point here isn't linked to the order of creation or a woman's relationship to a man. It's tied to this bigger, overarching moral principle of modesty. It's part of a system designed to protect the dignity of both individuals and the community as a whole.
So when you step back and look at it, this one simple garment has been on an absolutely incredible journey. It's been adopted, adapted, and reinterpreted in profoundly different ways by each of these three major religions.
Let's just wrap this all up real quick. In Judaism, it goes from stories to a hard rule symbolizing status, modesty, and marriage. Then in Christianity, Paul's writings redefine it as a symbol of the divine order. And finally, in Islam, the Quran frames it as part of a universal ethic of modesty for both men and women.
I mean, what a history for a single piece of fabric, right? It started as a cultural marker of status, became a theological symbol of cosmic order, and then was integrated into a universal principle of social modesty. Its meaning was never, ever set in stone. It was always being shaped by the context of the faith that adopted it.
And, that brings us all the way to today. After this incredible, long and complex history, filled with all these shifting meanings and interpretations, we're left with one final, crucial question. In our modern, globalized world, what does this single garment truly symbolize now?